Okay.
Good evening. I want to call to order the April 26th, 2022 meeting. I was just counseling them, and I messed up. Thank you. This is the 2026 Planning Commission meeting. Due to COVID-19, this will be both a physical meeting location and virtual meeting per Washington Proclamation 20-28. Meeting may be viewed live via YouTube. To leave a public comment that will be made part of the meeting record, please call and leave a message at 360-279-4512. That's 360-279-4512. The first order of business to call the roll. I'm Vice Chair Commissioner Freeman. We have Commissioner Southwood, it's remote. We have Sarah Schatz, that's also remote. We have Commissioner Errol Plumley, who's to my right, and our new Commissioner, John Chazar. Well, welcome for your first meeting. So the second order of business will be to approve the minutes for February 22nd, 2022.
I move to approve the minutes from February 22nd, 2022.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Do you have a unanimous? Thank you. Okay, then. The second order of business will be the public comments. We have no one in the audience, and we have no public comments have been received. So with that, we'll go to item 1, which is a site-specific rezone code amendment. This is a public hearing. David Call is...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Good to be here tonight. If we can run the PowerPoint, that would be great. Welcome to the new planning commissioners, by the way. Nice to have you. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about a site-specific rezone, and we had talked once before about this in a study session. What text amendments are is they're zoning code amendments, and those are text language changes to the law in the zoning ordinance. What we're talking about tonight is a site-specific rezone, which is just one site. If you might be familiar with other types of zoning changes, it covers a whole area. You might be doing a comprehensive plan amendment along with a rezone, which covers several properties. In this case, it's just one site. This ordinance will amend 4 different sections of code, and those sections are listed there, 1820, 260, 270, 1975, 20, and 1840, 100. Essentially what we're doing is we're taking the site-specific rezone process from a Type 4 process into Type 5, which is a legislative type of process. What we're doing that for is because, well, I'll show you here in a couple seconds. Site-specific rezones are done by ordinance, and that's always the way they have to be done. The only hearing body that can actually approve an ordinance is the city council. And so therefore, only the city council can approve a site-specific rezone, and that's done when it's called a Type 5. Essentially, we do a public hearing, it goes to the hearing examiner. The hearing examiner makes their conditions and their findings, and they make a recommendation to the city council. The city council will then go forward and process the ordinance for a site-specific rezone. What that really means is the council's not going to deny it because it's got all the recommendations, it's got everything in it for legal purposes. But what they do is they have to approve an ordinance, And that's what they do. So it's kind of a foregone conclusion, but it is a legal step we have to take. Next up in the future, the City Council will address this in a public hearing on May 17th. And this is your recommendation, your recommended recommendation, and we're available for any questions you might have.
Thank you. By moving these from 4 to 5, does that improve some efficiencies or provide better service to the community by doing this as opposed to the way that it's currently structured?
I don't think it really changes the customer service angle of it. It basically, you'll still use a hearing examiner, which was required before, and this will just legitimize the process through the City Council. So it won't really change that. It just makes it legal.
Thank you for that.
I
John.
apologize for the question. I probably says I missed the first 2-3 meetings on this. So just for clarification purposes, if there's a piece of property, let's just say on Pioneer, that's zoned for residential, and that one specific property wants to be changed to commercial, in order to do that, that's what we're talking about here, there would have to be an ordinance approved by the City Council in order to change it from residential to commercial.
Exactly.
Okay.
First thing we would check is the comprehensive plan to make sure it has the correct land use. And if it had the correct land use, then we could process a rezone to that appropriate land use.
Thank you.
Further comments? Somebody wish to make
I move to recommend approval of the text amendment to the City Council regarding site-specific rezones, OHMC Section 18.20.260, 18.20.270, 19.75.20, and 18.4.100.
I have a motion by Commissioner Earl Plumley to approve the motion for the City Council.
I second.
We have a second by Commissioner John Shazar. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
We have a unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item number B was eliminated from this meeting, so we'll go straight to item number C, which is an active transportation plan. This is a public meeting. We've got senior planner, Captain Matt. CAC?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Is it the second item or the third item?
It's the item number 3, yes, C.
Oh, okay. So we're on active transportation plan? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the mic, so
That is
I
correct.
apologize.
That is correct.
Good evening. Kat Kamax, Principal Planner, here to present the active transportation plan. My apologies, I couldn't hear the mic very well, so I thought we were talking about the NPDES permit. But anyways, active transportation plan. For people who don't know what an active transportation plan or what it is or what it would do for the city, this meeting is just to share with the commission some videos that I found on YouTube that would help kind of convey the message, and they summarize it better than we can as staff maybe, and different ways of addressing is also helpful. So I found 3 or 4 videos to share with the commission I have a short presentation. I'll jump to that in a little bit, but let me give a brief introduction to why we're doing this project and where we are, because we do have some new members on the commission. So, active transportation plan. It was a plan that our existing transportation plan has several kind of goals underneath it to follow up as follow-up actions. And an active transportation plan or a bike pedestrian plan has always been in the books for us to follow up on. We were waiting for a good funding source to try and get some consultants to help us with that. And we applied for a grant with the Regional Transportation Planning Organization in Island County. And we were awarded a grant for $129,000 or so to go hire consultants to do this plan. So we are starting that effort. It's a federal grant program, so it's run a little differently than some of the state grants that we normally get. So we're going through a little more extensive process of trying to get the paperwork done with the state. But we're very close to advertising for requests for proposals from consultants, and we'll go through that process in the next couple months or so, and we'll keep you updated on that. But before we jump into this entire planning process, I'm sure you have some questions on what an active transportation plan is. So let me share my screen and give you a short presentation. We'll watch a couple of videos. So let me see. I hope you can see that. That's just my PowerPoint presentation. And when I click on the link, I hope it'll go to the YouTube channel directly. So anyways, normal questions of, what's an active transportation plan? How would an active transportation plan benefit the city? How it'll be implemented? Plan goals and policies, safety projects can be identified. There's a lot of things that an active transportation plan can do. But we'll start with some very basics. What I will do after this presentation is I will forward these links to the Planning Commission so that you can watch them on your own time. I have about 6 videos here, and I put the times on here. We'll watch about the 2-minute video and the 5-minute video. I think that would be sufficient for our meeting time. Some of the other videos are a little bit longer, 12, 18, and 13 minutes. I will send the commission the links to this, and you can watch it on your own time. They are really interesting videos. We chose them for a lot of different angles to look at active transportation and what it can mean for the city. And maybe at the next meeting, after you've looked at some of these videos, we can have an open discussion on thoughts and ideas and so on. And we can incorporate those ideas as we go hire a consultant. And so we can include that into the scope. If we have some special things that we want to achieve through our transportation plan, we can make sure we can include that in the scope with the consultants. So with that being said, I'll open up the first video. This is just actually, if you Rob Voigt is a planner that actually used to work for Oak Harbor. He used to work here when I first came here to Oak Harbor. He has since then moved to Canada, and he is now a planner in Canada. And he's a very interesting person with a lot of great ideas. He's an artist. And so I'm glad he made some of these videos because they're really simple and easy to follow. So anyway, that's a little history. And then I'll also share a video on, how an active transportation plan can contribute towards the economy. So we have some economics section, which you may be interested in. And then there are some other videos, like I said, I will give you the links that you can look at. So without further ado,
What is active transportation, and why is it important? This is Urban Planning 101. Active transportation means any way people use to get around under their own power, on foot, by bike, wheelchair, or even skateboard. It is sometimes called alternative transportation, but it is important to remember that people have been traveling under their own power a lot longer than they've been using vehicles. So it's not really alternative. In fact, many people can only use active transportation methods because of their age, economics, or for health reasons. Why is active transportation important to urban planning and our communities? Well, these ways of moving around our towns don't add pollution to our air or water. And communities with more people traveling by foot or bike are generally healthier and happier. And towns that do not have safe and convenient ways for people to get around without using a vehicle are limiting the freedom and access to daily needs for those people that don't have that choice. There are lots of ways that a town can support the active transportation needs of its citizens, and they are not necessarily difficult. There are simple things that citizens, elected officials, engineers, and planners can do to make their community active transportation friendly, such as making sure that the different places people need access to are not too far apart, like putting a school, post office, and corner store near where people live, or putting in sidewalks and walkways along streets, and connecting them to the places people need to go. Making sure that there are safe locations to lock your bike or take a rest, and putting in good and convenient bus stops so that when people need to use a vehicle, it's easier for them. So now you know the basics of what active transportation is, why it is important to your community, and the kinds of things your town can do so that you and your neighbors can live in a place that is healthier, cleaner, and easier for everyone to get around. I'm Robert Voigt, and this has been Urban Planning 101.
okay, so that was a good 2-minute overview of what an active transportation plan is, and it talks generally about how you can achieve it by putting land uses right next to each other, or requiring bike racks, or transit, considering transit, and so on. So that's a good summary. Sorry, I don't know if that was on my side or not. Hang on a second.
So let me add to the complexity of the situation we find ourselves in.
Sorry about that. Get back to our video. Okay, so I have one more video. I think YouTube was playing in the back. My apologies. So I have one more video, the 5-minute video on the economics, and I think this will be a short one for us to just kind of look at, and then I'll leave the rest of the links for the commission to look at, and then we can open it up for questions or comments. So.
If you're a Washington homeowner, 2022 is your last chance to go solar. In December of 2020, Congress passed an extension to the solar investment credit, which pays.
If you've seen any of our past videos, it's no surprise that here at PlanFacts, we're big fans of active transportation.
It's a fun and healthy way of getting around.
Sure, that's nice knowledge, but here at PlanFacts, we're all about the green.
Like the environment?
No, like that cold hard cash, baby. Make it rain!
When it
it comes to active transportation, planners, environmentalists, and health professionals all support an increase in healthy, cleaner ways of getting around.
See, there you go again, putting the majority of your emphasis on silly little things like the environment or health. When's the last time the environment paid for a bike lane?
It is true that the biggest barrier to active transportation is infrastructure, and good sidewalks, bike lanes, trails, and greenways are necessary to get people out of their cars and using active transportation. But there's also a solid financial case for investing in active transportation infrastructure. So pedal it back a bit, and I'll explain it to you. On average, a bike lane only costs $20,000 per kilometer to build. This might seem like a lot of money, but not when you compare it to the cost of building roads. Just widening an already existing street to handle more traffic costs an average of $1.3 million per kilometer. That might be the most inefficient way to spend tax dollars, as the majority of that road space is occupied by car engines and empty seats.
Because active transportation infrastructure doesn't have giant metal boxes driving over it all the time, it has to be repaired and replaced far less often than roads. This means that theoretically our bike lanes could outlive all of us. Keep in mind that this does not account for weather, which tends to do its own fair share of damaged infrastructure. But wait, if we build more active transportation infrastructure and more people use it, then we'll have to spend more money to maintain it.
Well, yes, but even then the cost is just pennies on the dollar. In all of the Netherlands, only 6% of money spent on road infrastructure is put towards bicycle facilities, yet cycling makes up 27% of all journeys.
Transportation infrastructure costs less to build, costs less to maintain, it's better for the environment, and it's healthier. Why are municipalities building more of it?
Well, politics are often influenced by money, and businesses have money, so they often get a say in what councils will or won't approve.
Oh, and businesses hate active transportation infrastructure. Well, actually, they hate giving up room for cars, and they have a good reason to be worried about roads being narrowed or giving up parking spaces. I mean, you gotta be thinking about your customers.
It's true, but oftentimes business owners overestimate the amount of their customers that come by car. Studies from all over the world have shown that business owners underestimate the number of customers that use active transportation and typically overestimate the number of customers that drive by 100%. A study conducted in Toronto found that 78% of retail visitors wanted to see active transportation improvements in their neighborhood, and that customers who arrive by foot and bicycle visit them most often and spend the most money per month.
Now that I think about it, business areas that have great active transportation infrastructure do perform very well. A worldwide study found that retail areas that see improved active transportation infrastructure experience a 49% upward trend in retail turnover. One of the best examples is in Lodi, California, where 20 years ago, the city completed a $4.5 million pedestrian retrofit to widen sidewalks, add bump outs, and streetscape elements. Since then, the project has been directly linked to the establishment of 60 new businesses, a decrease in the vacancy rates from 18% to 6%, and a 30% increase in sales tax revenue. But this is only one example out of a dozens of projects that show how increasing active transportation in an area also increases business revenue or value.
And don't think that you need California beaches to benefit from active transportation. Dozens of countries with similar climates to Nova Scotia have very high percentages of active transportation users, including Denmark, Germany, Sweden, and the Netherlands. And the benefit of good active transportation infrastructure doesn't just end with increases in revenue. It frees up remaining parking spots by reducing parking demand, reduces congestion around businesses and makes the area more inviting, and it encourages your employees to be more active, resulting in less sick days and lower health claims.
But the biggest reason for businesses to support active transportation infrastructure is a changing market demographic. Younger generations are moving away from private automobiles, with fewer North American teens even bothering to get their driver's license. We also need to consider our own aging population. Like, how long will our pensioners be able to safely drive? Or how many of them will be able to keep up with car-associated costs? With the current clientele aging, future clientele being less interested in visiting car-rented areas, and everyone starting to become a little more frugal, business owners can find themselves left behind for more hip competitions.
If you want to help your community or business by increasing active transportation, make sure to show up and give your support at public meetings. And let your local councillor or politician know that active transportation is important to you as a voter and a constituent.
And remember, the next time you visit a local business, let them know how much you enjoy being able to walk or bike there, or comment with the lack of active transportation infrastructure. It's important to remind business owners, politicians, friends, and even neighbors that customers walk, bike, and take the bus. So remember, get out there and spend that money!
All right. Those are the two videos I wanted to share with the commission. Like I said, I've got 4 other videos, and I will share this presentation. I will email it soon after this presentation to the Planning Commission, so you can take a look at some of the other videos. Some of the other videos, you know, the benefits of active transportation. It's a 10-minute long video. The voice is a little boring, but the graphics are actually pretty interesting. If you can bear with the monotonous voice, there's some information in there. And some of the other longer presentations are actually like TED Talks. I don't know if you are familiar with TED Talks. They bring on some of the top people in various fields to chat about topics. And so a couple of them are from the TED Talks, and they're really interesting people in the planning profession trying to promote more walkable cities and giving ideas on how to promote policy and what to think about when considering walkable communities and what it means. So I will definitely send these links out so that the commission can watch more of these videos and get ideas and be educated on where we're going with our transportation plan, or what we envision that it could potentially do for Oak Harbor. So with that, I won't take up any more of your time. There's no action for this. This is just a presentation to just get you familiar with the topic as we bring more and more of this information with consultants on board. Hopefully in a couple months, there'll be more chances to talk about this topic. So with that, I will end my presentation and turn it back over to the commission for questions, thoughts, comments.
Are there any comments or questions?
Thank you, CAC. I just had a couple questions. The first one being, with a grant of $129,000, how many hours of consultation time are we estimating that that's going to provide?
We should have a more than normal interaction time with the consultants with that grant dollar amount. I asked for a higher amount because I thought that we would want the consultants to also produce some work at the very end that we could implement some of these projects by doing some surveys, maybe with streets and getting some real restriping plans and so on. So I added extra dollars to do that. Just as an example, you know, a planning effort to update, let's say, a countywide plan, a bicycle plan, normally ranges anywhere between 70 to 80,000. So I padded the grant dollars with more dollars so that we can get more touch points with the consultants, whether they do more I'm also envisioning sort of a bicycle tour, you know, that consultants can provide with commissioners and council members and even the public to go actually ride around the city and actually look at ways to do that. I think that'll be a little hands-on, and that all takes some time and money because it's public interaction that the consultants have to spend time here with us. So those are the kind of things I envision when I asked for the grant dollars. So hopefully that'll give us a lot more touch points with the consultants.
Thank you. Are there funds identified or available to enact any of the plans that the consultants provide us?
Not currently. So the grant dollars is just to create the plan. And then once we have the plan and once we have a list of projects, we'll have hopefully some estimates, and that'll help us to plan for more grant dollars for implementation.
Thank you, CAC.
Are there any other questions? Seeing no other questions, thank you, Keck, for that. Okay, with that, we'll go on to the fourth item. This is the housekeeping code changes. and David Cull will be the speaker.
A little bit about the housekeeping program. We talked about this, I think, a couple of months ago. And so what I'd like to do is just review it a little bit once again for the benefit of the new commissioners. So this, once again, a zoning code amendment is the same thing as a text amendment. And this is called housekeeping. And what housekeeping is, it's where you take a number of minor changes that are not substantial, but they have a lot of impact, and you put that all in one batch of code changes. So instead of attacking one particular topic with a lot of different information, this is just putting small changes together in one basic ordinance so that you can cover a lot of ground for lots of different cleanups, areas where you might have had a oversight, other outdated things that have come up, and things you need to update. So tonight we have 4 areas of code we'd like to change, and this is a workshop only, so there'll be no decisions made tonight. This item will come back to you in May for a public hearing. The first section we're going to talk about is fire sprinklers. Section 8.05.050 is a section that talks about fire sprinklers being required in duplexes and townhomes. And this came from our fire department, who has seen a number of fires in attached units fairly recently. And although you have firewalls that are built in between these units, they haven't been effective at stopping fires. So this is why they'd like to propose this change, is for safety. You don't want to have people getting hurt next door where a fire was just started next door. So this is an amendment to section, I think it's called 13D of the fire code. And the actual cost to put these systems in are about $1,000 or $2,000. They use plastic pipe, and so they're not that expensive to do. So the fire department will be here next time to talk to you, to give you their background on this subject. The next area is the existing buildings code, and that's actually not building code itself, that's in our zoning ordinance for existing buildings code, section 805.020. The idea is to match the non-conforming code that we currently have elsewhere in our code with the existing buildings code. Down below that, we talked a little bit about the value of a building to restore it, and at 50% of the value rather than at 60% of the current replacement value. And so if you're familiar with non-conforming regulations, let's say your building gets burned down or torn down up to a point, then you have to bring it up to current code. In this case, our current code in the non-conforming section says 50%, but in our existing building code, it goes to 60% of the current replacement value. So we'd like to have those match and have some consistency. We'd also like to change the term current replacement value to appraised value, and that's at the recommendation of our building official. So these are, important changes, just in case someone has a building that gets trashed in some way and they want to replace it. It gives you a good parameter to start from. The third section is the permitted uses in industrial, section 19.20.730. The zoning matrix was recently approved. As you remember, Ray Lindenberg came before you, had a whole matrix of changes for the industrial area. Unfortunately, there was an industrial section that was overlooked and didn't get pulled out of the new version, so it still exists, and so it conflicts with the matrix that was built. So this is just merely a cleanup to take that particular section out. The fourth and last section of code we'd like to amend is section 19.42.050. This deals with accessory dwelling units. A couple years ago, I think it was, the planning department brought new accessory dwelling units code language in front of you. You approved it, as well as the city council. It was progressive and opened up a lot of avenues for accessory dwelling units, so it was well received. Oka Harbor currently is densifying neighborhoods, so you'll see a new presentation come through fairly soon on density. And what we're doing is we're putting more dwelling units on existing lots. So not only infill development, but let's say you have a single-family house with a large yard. The idea is to densify these neighborhoods to allow a lot more dwelling units for affordability. And that's coming regardless of what we do with accessory dwelling units. So what this will do is it will take away the requirement that we currently have to have a property owner live on the same site as an accessory dwelling unit. And that was something that stayed in the code language last time. A lot of people thought that was still necessary. The reality of it is anybody could be living on any piece of property, whether they're the owner or the renter. We're not in the business of regulating who lives on property. Essentially, if the tenant lives as an accessory dwelling unit to the other building, it's not really going to matter who's in there. You're still going to have loud stereos, cars running loud, kids crying, noise. There's going to be impact no matter where you live. And so we don't think it makes any difference if you have an owner on one site or a tenant on the same site. The original thinking was that the owner would be on site to control what happens on the accessory dwelling, and that makes a lot of sense. However, we're densifying neighborhoods and we're not regulating who lives on property. We're adding more dwelling units all the time to existing properties. So this is a code change that is fairly easy to do, and it makes sense. So these are the 4 code changes we'd like to talk to you about tonight, called housekeeping. And the next up, we have a city council workshop. That's tomorrow night on the same subject. You'll see this in a public hearing on May 24th, and then the city council will be back for a public hearing on June 7th. We have a couple of items that are ready for prime time. The issue over accessory dwelling units is one that people would like to see fairly quickly, as well as the fire sprinklers. So, like I said, the fire chief will be here next time and be available for any questions you may have then, as well as I'm available for any questions you have tonight.
I have one, David. All these items that we're talking about, aren't these coming down from where the state has changed their rules and laws? I know the 80 units was from a state issue, and even with the planning magazine we receive, it's a big issue across the country. But also, I think, isn't fire and the sprinkler system itself, because I know I've been pro fire sprinklers for condos and apartments and even condos for a long, long time, but you don't see it here in the Pacific Northwest. You do see it in Southern California where there's a real issue. So I think it's a great change for that. But at the same time, I'm going to ask this question. Say, for instance, we have an ADU request they would have put in. Does the fire sprinkler system affect them? Because they are smaller units.
Conceivably, Bruce, it could conceivably affect it because an ADU could be built into the same principal dwelling. It could just be a separate unit attached. So in that case, I would think it would probably require a sprinkler system if this code goes through.
Would that also apply to, like, one of the ADUs could be a converted garage, as I understand it, to an existing dwelling unit?
I think converted garage would be the same. If it were detached garage, then the sprinkler requirement would not kick in because it'd be its own separate unit.
Okay. I've just, because I've been paying a lot of attention to, and thank you for the magazine, because that really, it really opens a lot of eyes and as to what's going on across the country. And the fire sprinkler system, I'm very pro for that. But at the same time, when we're looking at standpipes in apartment buildings, okay, for fire system is really an expensive item. It adds a lot of cost to the dwelling units that they're trying to build to get people in. And we keep adding on these layers is all I'm looking at as to how do we get to the affordability piece of it. So, but that's a question for the fire department, obviously, but it's, I had the question about the ADUs, if something like that would also be required for that. But hopefully that'll come out.
Yes, save that question for the fire chief when he's here
Yes.
next time. Ask him about standpipes and anything else you need.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Go ahead.
Would I assume that the sprinkler requirement would also fall into the existing building? So any existing duplexes right now don't have sprinkler systems until they do 50% value renovations? Are we requiring them, is this code change going to require all duplexes and multifamily units to retrofit their buildings with sprinkler systems?
Great question. We would not contemplate requiring existing duplexes or triplexes or townhomes to have these systems put in. But if it were destroyed to the level of 50%, then you need to bring it up to code. The likelihood of that happening is fairly small, but it certainly could happen.
David, I'll go back one step farther, because like I said, the sprinkler systems in even single-family residential units, save lives and saves property. Or is there thought going forward for, even single dwelling units to be sprinkled as well?
Commissioner, I can't really speak on behalf of the fire department or the building department. I know there's a number of different requirements they have for when fire sprinklers are triggered in single-family homes. Sometimes it pertains to the number of fire hydrants they have in the neighborhood, response times, a number of other factors go into that. But let's ask the fire chief that question.
Okay.
And just one follow-up question. I have no specific example of this, but do we have any small multifamily unit dwellings that are actually on well systems versus on city water, where well systems would not be able to keep up with the water flow necessary for a sprinkler system? And would that be taken into consideration, or would that basically building plan be denied and be required to tie into the city water system some way, some form?
I think most things in the city are on city water, but I don't know for sure.
It's got to be close to 100%. And certainly they could do a hardship exemption in the small case of that, but most places are pretty much waters everywhere. There's few places that aren't on sewer, but water is pretty easy for us to roll out and to put into areas. So, yeah, good question, but not really. I don't see that being a factor at all in doing that. I think it's really everybody's benefit to do the water connection with availability and the fire protection. And sometimes it's even cost effective for the developer because they can, the chief can talk to about, I've seen some of the examples where they don't have to do the hydrants and they don't have to do some of the road issues and they don't have to do some of the configuration for fire engines because the whole units are put in with sprinklers. So sometimes they can kind of configure it and actually come out with a cheaper cost with the sprinklers. So, and certainly we want to encourage them. It's kind of a balance, you're right, because a lot of things we do, we have one here with the ADU, you trying to encourage more affordable housing and doing that option, and then the other one, we're putting a requirement here. But I think the chief, in his opinion, he'll probably tell you that thinks the lives, cost of saving lives and the public safety kind of preempts the issue with affordability.
David, do you know if the residential facilities that got sprinklers, if this went through, would they have to do the same requirements as a commercial building, the annual inspections, the pressure tests? Would that be something they had to schedule and pay for, or how would that be handled?
Great question. I don't know the answer to that. I am familiar with the commercial annual inspections. That's a whole program that fire departments put on, and that's designed to keep your ISA rating, your insurance rating in check for commercial and industrial buildings. but I don't know if they would come out annually to inspect the residential inspection, sprinkler systems. So I don't know, Blaine, do you know?
I believe there is some, but the chief will be able to answer that off the top of his head. Such an easy one for him to do it, but I know in the HOAs and stuff, there's some nominal fees, and I think we use a third party that does a lot of the inspections for us, so, but he can give you a more definitive answer.
Thank you.
Okay, that's, David, I guess it brings up the final item on our agenda for monthly departmental report. This is a public meeting.
Yes, sir, thank you. One tradition we've started with our planning commission is to just kind of do a little rundown on some of the current planning projects we're working on. As you know, the planning commission used to review a lot of these kinds of projects, but those have all started going to the hearing examiner. So a year ago, we started this report just to give you an idea of what's happening in the department. You might remember the Kirkendall annexation, which is right out by Marin Woods. That's 2 lots proposed by the Kirkendall family. That's still moving forward, and CAC is working on an annexation agreement with them right now, so that'll be going forward to City Council fairly soon. Also, CAC works on the 2021 docket and the capital improvements plan. That'll be going forward on May 17th to the City Council. Other current planning projects, subdivisions, the Hinza 25-lot PRD subdivision is still moving forward. It's at the pre-application stage, and that's over by 10th, Northeast 10th. The other one we talked about, I think before, was the Glint pre-application on the old Berg Ford site. That's going to have the Sonic and a car wash. Popeyes has dropped out because the size of the roundabout is taking up too much land for them to actually occupy the site. They were hoping to buy the property next door, and that was bought by somebody else, and they're not a willing seller. So we're just going to have the Sonic and the car wash. Bayview pre-application is 46 units at the corner of Ely and Barrington, so that's going forward. Building, we talked about Marin Woods, 46 units, 46 single-family homes. It's currently being graded. The McKinney Place townhomes on 3rd Street, there's 19 homes under construction, and those are meeting the middle market. So you're getting the townhomes. So they're not single-family homes, they're not condos, but it gives you that middle market that we don't always hit. Long-range planning, the SEPA exemptions and threshold update, Dennis Lefevre will be doing that for us. You'll see that fairly soon. The density and dimension standards, Ray Lindenberg will be back with that, so you'll see that. Gravel roads and parking lots in large parks, I'll be bringing that back to you. And then the 2022 docket, CAC will be back with fairly soon. Administrative changes, the new electronic permitting system. We had training on April 12th through the 15th, and that was with Public Works and the Fire Department and the planning and building. So it's a centralized permitting system we haven't had before. So this is really going to help with our coordination of various projects. Ginger Pennington passed her certified building official exam, so she's now a CBO, and that's the highest level you can get in the building world. So good to have her certified. And Patty O'Mahony is attending a permit tech training right now in Leavenworth. So we're trying to invest in our employees and get them the training they need so they can get the certifications and continue to grow in their career. They add value to their own careers, and they add value to our organization as well. Next Planning Commission meeting is May 24th, and that concludes our report.
Are there any other questions? No. Okay, David, thank you very much. It was a good report.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes this meeting. Our next meeting is on May 24th. Thank you.